Hey guys, yeah, this is episode 19 of the Rugby Recap. You have myself as well as the Kiwi lads. First of all, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right, mate. Couple big matches coming this weekend. A few games that will definitely determine who's making it through the quarterfinals and who's going to be missing out. Now, there's a couple big ones that I know that you'll be looking forward to as well. You're actually going to one of them to the stadium, if I'm not wrong.
Indeed.
Box versus Tonga. It's going to be a good one.
No, I can't wait for that game. Really can't wait for it. But of course, before we get into this, guys, make sure to like this video, guys, subscribe to our channel, and check out our respective channels. But again, this is really now round 4 of the Rugby World Cup, and the first game really that we're going to kind of cover in this preview is Japan versus Samoa. So what do you think about this game overall? Because again, these two sides going into this game, like you'd expect, I think, the Japanese to be the favorites going into it, but Samoa, they can definitely hold their own. What's your perspective on this game?
Well, the intriguing part of this game is Samoa won the last time that these two sides went head to head in the Pacific Nations Cup, 24 points to 22. I have a feeling we're going to get a relatively close fixture here for the Samoans. I believe the big thing for them will be that discipline. They can get that right. Their backline, when it's firing, can be extremely dangerous. But then the Japanese, I think it's been their handling that's been letting them down as of late. So it's a bit of a mashup of someone's got better discipline, someone's got better handling. Which side end up getting more points because of it? But yeah, quite a few changes made for both of the starting lineups. I think that the big changes for Samoa is definitely in those forward pack positions. They decided to make quite a few switches. Jordan Taufua now getting himself the start in the starting side after Luatua's been just a little bit lackluster.
Yeah, no, again, it's really interesting to see what's happened with Luatua because he just hasn't been in the best of form, I'd say, throughout this Rugby World Cup. But we have Jordan Taufua, of course, coming in. He obviously can slot in pretty quickly at the number 8 spots, and he's played there a lot actually. And going back towards his Crusaders days, he played there regularly. So he should have no issue really on that front. But again, I think, like I said beforehand, the Japanese are definitely seen as favorites in this one. But it should be a cracker of a game. And for the Japanese especially, they will need 5 points because that final game they do play against the Argentinians, that will be kind of seen as a decider, you could say, maybe in terms of who gets that second spot, and obviously goes through to the to the knockout stages. So but they definitely need a bonus point here. But we'll see what happens, of course. And again, we'll move on then towards the next one, which is the All Blacks versus Italy. Definitely one that you'll be looking out for. And this is one that I think a lot of fans are looking out for as well. Again, I think it's no surprise that the All Blacks are seen as favorites going into this one. But you can never really underestimate the Italians because, recently their form has definitely picked up. And, of course, they have 2 wins under their belt. Again, they did come back, I believe, against the Uruguayans in that last game they played. And a pretty impressive way in the way they did it. But, again, does that now mean that, there's a bit of, because they only came back against the Uruguayans, there's a bit of, like, I don't know. I think beforehand, if I was looking at the Namibia game, I was like, okay, maybe they have something about them. It can kind of attack them. But I don't know, because it was so close in that Uruguayan game, it kind of, I don't know, it makes me think that this game could just be another, a high-scoring game for New Zealand. But, I could be wrong. What do you think? What do you think about this one?
I think it's going to be a little bit closer than first anticipated. The All Blacks, they've gone with this team here that I guess there were a few surprises in there for myself. We actually didn't really predict a couple of the side correct. Dalton Papali'i starting at 7, which I think is probably the smart option, having Sam Cane returning from injury. Frizzell's back in the starting side. Whitelock off the bench with that experience. I think the big question mark for the ABs, I know we've talked about it a little bit, but it's those props at the moment. Ofa Tuangafasi, number 1, Nepal and number 3. Do you see that as the right option for the ABs here? Would you have gone with maybe to Mighty Williams, give him a bit of time in the starting lineup just in case there is that injury that could end up coming in just before those playoff games?
I mean, look, to be fair, I wasn't really thinking about it when we made our prediction video, but I can understand the reason why they've gone with Offa and Nepo as the props for this game, just because, when you're looking at, like, even before the Rugby World Cup, they're obviously targeting that France and Italy game as seen as the 2 more challenging games they're going to have within the group. And it's understandable that they've gone with this pairing in this one because, again, it's the one they also went with, I believe, in that opening game against the French. So in my eyes, this is what they see as the starting, kind of pairing. Again, there is Tyrell Lomax, who is coming back into the side now. So it'll be interesting to see if he, because I believe he's coming off the bench for this one. So it's one of those where maybe that could change going into the next few games. But again, it really depends. Really depends because he's only just coming back. So it's understandable why they've gone with Nibalala there. But again, they do have another game against, I believe, Uruguay, if I'm not mistaken. So maybe that's where they switch it up and maybe go with Tyrell Lomax, and then for the quarterfinal, I believe against, most likely against Ireland, that's when they can make the decision if they want to obviously go with Lomax or Nepo. But at the moment, I have no problem with it because it's like the Sam Kane situation. It's understandable why he's not starting straight away. But yeah, no. Overall, pretty pleased, I think, with that for the squad. Again, it's going to be really. What do you think is the key battle in this game? If you had to say the key battle that you can think of.
I mean, there's a couple in those back lines between the two sides. Of course, Mo'unga versus Garbisi will be a very intriguing one.
That'll be a great battle. Yeah.
As the number 10s, Mark Talia going head-to-head with Capuzzo as well. I feel like that is going to be a wing that you won't want to take your eyes off. I think for the All Blacks, the fact that they've got Damian McKenzie off the bench is intriguing because every other time that they've had every other time that they've had Richie Mo'unga in the starting side, they don't normally have Damian McKenzie as an option off that bench. So I'm wondering whether or not there's going to be tactically something a little bit different near the end of the game. You did mention in your prediction that you would have gone with Richie Mo'unga at number 10 and then Damian McKenzie at number 15, and that is perhaps something they could look at here. Beauden Barrett, he's been playing a huge amount of minutes throughout this Rugby World Cup. Surely they don't want to play him up against Uruguay, give him a little bit of a spell. So it makes that big question mark of who goes into number 15. Could it be Will Jordan? Could it be McKenzie? Could it even be Geordie Barrett?
I was going to say, I can see some type of switch maybe in that Uruguay game where, in all honesty, I think the most likely thing they'll do is probably go with McKenzie at 10. I think, for that game. And then that's when they'll obviously make the decision, like you said, if they'll go with Barrett there or Geordie or Will Jordan, or I don't know, they can even go with Lester or there's actually a lot of players who can play the position, but we'll see what happens.
And speaking of player switches and whatnot, Argentina versus Chile, that will be the next game that has taken place this weekend. Now, at the time of recording, we do not know the lineups, but I'd assume Argentina will make quite a few changes here, give a few big players a rest, and then go into that next game up against, like you mentioned, their important game up against the Japanese, rearing to go. But what do you think about the South American derby? We don't get to see it happen too often in the world of rugby. I think the last time was probably Uruguay versus Chile in the warm-up games of the Rugby World Cup. Can Los Pumas make a statement here, do you think? Will they be able to put a big score on Los Teros?
I think it's going to be interesting because, like you said, this is the first kind of South American derby we're actually going to see in a while that I can think of. I mean, I haven't seen one in a very long time in that sense. So I know this could be a first one actually for me now that I think about it. But it's one of those where I think both fans, both sides, they're going to be very kind of up for this one, and it's going to create kind of a good atmosphere, I expect. So you never know, maybe that's what helps kind of Chile in the game, actually kind of make it a bit closer. But yes, you are right that maybe Argentina are definitely seen as the favorites going into this. So it may come into their advantage, obviously, as well. So, it's going to be an exciting game. I'm actually looking forward to this. I'm hoping actually that Karevi actually starts as well in this one because, again, you normally see what the likes of, Julio Montoya being the starter, and I would like to see Karevi kind of get a go in this one, but we'll see. We'll see what happens on that front. But now,
I do have to correct myself. I did call Chile Los Teros, which is, of course, Uruguay, so I got a bit excited, but, I do apologize for that.
No worries. But again, moving on towards the next one, which is Fiji versus Georgia. Again, this is a very important kind of game for the Fijians because they have to kind of, they need to get the 5 points. Just that's what they need to get. It's really simple in that sense where, with that, Wales win over the Wallabies, this now kind of makes it even more important for the Fijians to get this 5 points because if I'm not mistaken, if they do get the bonus point victory, this does, kind of does seal them the, I guess, the win in terms of advancing to the next stage of this competition. So, it's really important. But again, the Fijians can't underestimate Georgia, I think. That's one thing I do want to mention because Georgia, we've seen them throughout the whole year, even before this, they've got some impressive victories in there and even the years before. So it's one of those where they didn't. You can't really underestimate them. But at the same time, looking at the performances in this World Cup, I think they should be able to get the job done. I mean, like, what do you think about this game?
I think the benefit for Fiji is they know how to score tries. Whereas the Georgians, in a couple of their last fixtures, they just haven't quite looked like they know how to get over that try line when they build up that attacking momentum. Fiji last week, they did have a tough fought. Fiji 2 weeks ago, they had a tough fought victory over the Wallabies, having a rest week, which makes me intrigued to know whether or not they go with the strongest lineup possible for this game, or whether you mix it up a little bit, try and balance it out between this game up against Georgia and the Portuguese. But I believe there's going to be a few standout players for the Fijians who really step up here, whether that's Tuisova, Radradra in that 4-pack. I believe that they may look to make a few switches just to give a little bit more opportunity to a few other players. Maybe even Ikanaveri comes into the starting lineup at number 2 rather than Matavesi. But for the Georgians, I think that they just need to really remember that, yes, getting a win is important in this World Cup, and yes, it will look good if they get one. But you do need to chase those tries. Go a bit more aggressive. Show everyone that you've got that attacking prowess to be able to score up against the top teams, because I feel like that will benefit them in the long run rather than going for those 3-pointers. Like that game up against Portugal, I feel like they should have been able to win at times, and if they had been a bit more aggressive, I believe that they could have. Saying that, Portugal, I feel they should have won at times throughout that game up against the Georgians.
Actually,
and they got a little bit unlucky near the end. So yeah, those little bits of extra pointage that you can get for yourself can be the difference between the win and the loss.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more of you. Couldn't agree more of you on that front. But anyway, we'll move on then towards the next one, which is Scotland versus Romania. Again, the Scottish coming back from a pretty impressive result against the Tongans last week, and they're going to look to kind of continue that form once more in this game against the Romanians. I do have to mention that I did see that Romania actually have lost 3 of their players actually going into this one, and 3 of their better players, to say the least. So it's kind of a bit of a hindrance on them now, because without them 3, like, I guess I'm not sure if they've replaced them already, but I know that they're making it'll be announced sooner or later. And again, it's one of those where it hinders them chances and even like making a statement in this one, because again they're not seen as the favorites at any stretch of the mean. But it would have been nice to see kind of Romania have a bit of more, I don't know, put their best lineup in this one. But again, like, for Scotland, on the other hand, they're definitely looking to get their 5 points, making it a bit interesting, to say the least, going into the Irish in that final game. But if I'm not mistaken, like even if the Boks, we'll get onto that later, I'm not even sure if they even win that one. It doesn't kind of certify their to the next stage. I think it's going to come down towards the last week, if I'm not mistaken. But what do you think about this one overall? Like, what do you think about this one game?
Well, Scotland ideally need to win this game by about 80 points, just to really increase that points differential. Although the order of tiebreakers is not based off points differential, it's based off head-to-head result first, which is a little bit different to other competitions around the world, which does mean that if Scotland and South Africa finish up on the same points, that it will be the South Africans going through due to that 18 points to 3 result. Now, the only game so far that they would actually have to go to points difference would be Georgia versus Portugal, theoretically, if those two sides were the two that were fighting for that same spot, seeing as they are the only draw in our Rugby World Cup. So ideally, in this game for South Africa up against Tonga, Scotland need to hope that they only score themselves 3 or less tries, because or else then their chances of making it through to the World Cup. And of course, if they end up on the same points, then people will be like, unlucky Scotland, you were almost there. But it's just that head-to-head result, how important that first game was, may be shown over the next couple of weeks for the Scottish.
Exactly.
With the fact that if it was a win, perhaps it could have been complete opposite.
Yeah, I like that. But again, maybe on then towards the next one, which is Australia versus Portugal. Again, the Wallabies are coming back from a heartbreaking loss, to say the least, against the Welsh, obviously, last week, in which the Welsh kind of literally tore them up in that whole game. It's one of those where, from a Wallaby perspective, this game is really just seen more as I don't know. It's like a last. I don't know what you can call this. You should never say it's a friendly, because it's a Rugby World Cup game, of course, but it's more like where it's Like, help me out here. Like, what would you call this game
Well,
as? Like for the Wallabies?
It's one of those ones that you could say it's to save face, last hurrah for the
Yeah,
Wallabies,
exactly.
maybe
That's
under
what you could
Eddie
say.
Jones.
Yeah.
But I think for the Wallabies, this
Ooh,
game
okay.
will mean a lot more to them in terms of the players than it will to the coaching and the management, because we've already seen a lot of controversy around there. Like, for these players out there on the field, they now have to live with the fact that they're the first Wallabies side to get knocked out before a quarterfinal in a Rugby
It's
World
crazy.
Cup.
Yeah.
And it's all well and good for Eddie if he's popping off to say konnichiwa to the Japanese side, but for the Wallabies that he's left behind, those boys now have to try and regain their legacy and start their legacy from scratch, because there's going to be a lot of work to do. But up against the Portuguese side, I don't think we can underestimate Portugal for this game, because they've pushed a couple of the teams. That's the same with Fiji when they play Portugal in the last round. As soon as you underestimate this Portuguese side, now that they've had a draw, that's as close as they've ever been to a win. And they want that first win in this Rugby World Cup. They mention it all the time. It's about inspiring the next generation, and what better way to inspire them than to beat a side that has won the World Cup in the past twice in the Wallabies.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, it could happen. And again, like, the Wallabies are, in a weird way, I'd probably say it's the worst time to face the Wallabies, because they're coming back from that defeat, and they'll be looking for not revenge really, but just really more of
Although
again,
that's what we said when it was going to be Wales up against Australia after Aussie lost to Fiji, and then the score happened.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I think for this one they're going to be going full guns blazing for what it is. But again, like you said, it really does depend on the lineup which the Wallabies do put out in this one. Like, do they go with their strongest lineup, or do they go with someone which they believe is just I don't know, not like a second tier lineup, but like, you know what I mean, like where it's more they're giving opportunity to players, in that sense. But yeah, no, we'll see what happens on that front. But again, we'll move on then towards the last one, which is the Springboks versus Tonga. This is the one I'm looking forward to the most, and again, I'll be there live as well. So it's going to be action packed. Really, again, we already know this kind of a lineup for the box, and it's pretty interesting. A lot of interesting changes. I have to mention. I don't want to go through all of them because I want to give you, obviously, I want to know what your thoughts on them as well. But the one that stood out to me was Dwayne Vermeulen at 7, which is interesting because I haven't seen him play there in a while. And they've gone with him and Jasper Visa. So it's interesting that they've gone with that. But again, what's your thoughts on the lineup before we kind of get into the overall game?
13 players from that starting lineup and reserves up against the Irish, keeping their spot. Front row wise, it's going to be very interesting because you got Oxnashade, Dion Forey, as well as Vincent Koch, the man who we weren't sure whether or not he was going to be match fit for this game. He is. So they have gone with him in that starting side. I think that the loose forward trio, Dwayne Vermeulen at 7, once again, it's a little bit similar to playing 4 halfbacks up against Romania, I believe, because it's probably going to work. Because they're playing Tonga, who cannot be underestimated, of course, but in this game, you'd expect the Springboks to get a relatively comfortable win, based off what we've seen from Tonga so far throughout this World Cup. So if Dwayne Vermeulen plays well at 7, does it tell you that he should be playing 7 for the quarterfinals up against more than likely France? No. It just tells you that he's played well up against a lower-ranked side. So, that's where... I don't know, could they have looked at Mostert as that number 7 option, seeing as he is coming off the bench? Is that what they'll look at later on in the game? We know RG Snyman would love to have that number 5 jersey, and I feel he would be more than capable of taking it during some of those playoff games. But for the Springboks, of course, a big talking point, the man playing at number 10, Andre Pollard. Exactly. What happens if he misses his first 2 kicks, Tim?
Yeah, I guess you never know, really. I mean, if Pollard was to miss, like, I don't know, like half of his kicks in the game, that would be pretty interesting because, again, I guess the comparisons would come up once more in terms of who starts at 10 for that game against the French. But, yeah, we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But no matter what, I mean, the Springbok side, I just think it's going to be one of those games where they're going to just have a lot of freedom. They're going to be allowed to do what they want, actually, and kind of express themselves, similar to what we saw in that Romania game. But it's interesting to see the amount of changes they have made in terms of resting all the players, because they've rested the likes of Bongi Manomi, like he's not even off the bench because they actually have the likes of Marco van Staden covering that position. They've rested Frans Herber as well as I'm trying to think who else. Peter Stutler Detroit. They arrested RJ Stamen as well as I'm trying to think of a list of others. I think that's the forwards done.
Williams are in the back line.
Williamson's the backs.
Also, Cheslin Colby.
Yeah, Cheslin Colby, Curly Lorenzo, and then Dimian Delunde. That's the last one. But like they've rested a lot of players in this one, which is I guess expected at the end of the day. But we'll see what happens. Looking forward to obviously see Dwayne Vermeulen play with Jasper Wiese. That's going to be the interesting one. But also very excited to see what Charles Piutau can do this one, because for me, I mean, I've never seen him play live, so for me, it's going to be very exciting to see what he can do and kind of bring towards this game. But anyway, we'll leave it there, guys. Just hope you guys obviously enjoyed this preview for round 4 of the Rugby World Cup. Let us know, obviously, in the comments what you guys think. Like, which games do you think will be the most intriguing to watch? And let us know, which players you believe could stand out before the game has happened. And we'll look back at this and see who was kind of right and who was kind of, wrong in that way. But anyway, we'll leave it there. Definitely like the video, guys. Subscribe to our channel. Check out our respective channels. And we'll see you guys next time.